I was born in south central Finland in a small town, Hämeenlinna. But then my family moved to live in Helsinki until the war. But during the war, I moved with my family and at that time, two sisters to the countryside in central Finland, to my mother's farmer's farmhouse. And I stayed there during the 5 war years. And those years were very, very important for me.
Why? Because of your childhood? How many years you were there? From which age to which age?
From the war began in the autumn of 1939, and we moved immediately there when I was 3 years old, and then I stayed there during the 5 war years. And it was a very humble, small farm. And in those years, particularly during the wartime, farmers were fairly poor. So there was only one book in the household, and that was the Bible. Not that they would have been especially religious, but everyone had that book. Otherwise, there were no books, no radio, no television. And I had plenty of time for myself, 5 years of time, which was very important, the slow time. Now when I see children today, my own grandchildren, for instance, I think they are always, they have too much things to do. Children, I think, need to be bored. I was bored 5 years, and those are my most important lessons of life.
Correct. Do you remember the features, the characteristics, the elements of design of that farm? Do you actually remember?
Yes, I do. Yes, I do.
Can you share with me the most important ones?
The farm, as I said, was a very typical small farm, a log building. But I remember that my first architectural experience was the space between the house and the cow house and sauna, which created an axis, which made a very strong impression on me as a young child. I realized that there is some intention in having the entrance aligned with that narrow space. And even when I approached the house, there was an acoustic world between the two buildings, the end of the cow house and the sauna, and which emphasized the intentionality and meaning. That is a very strong recollection.
Yeah. Do you think you draw inspiration in the way you currently design from those past memories and those pictures?
Yes. Altogether, the five years practically by myself, because there were no other children or boys within 3 kilometers or so. They were important for me because I had nothing else to do but observe. So when I'm usually nowadays introduced as a phenomenological thinker, I always correct and say my phenomenology is not academic phenomenology, it's a farm boy's phenomenology.
Which is perfect, no? The imagination that you that you experience a lot the exercise of imagination and reimagination by being bored.
Yes.
When you say it's very important for kids to be bored, I think about my kids, about my children. They are 7-year-old, and I actually exercise that you said. I let them get bored and take away their iPads and let them go in the grass, in the park, in the garden, and they come out with amazing ideas that I realize this comes from boredom. It is really important, and the way they see the world comes from those first years of life. And that's why I was asking you, because as an architect, a designer, I'm a designer, and I found design meaningless without understanding the end user needs. It's a little bit selfish to try to impose our ways of design, our ways of construct something, when the person has their own needs, and sometimes they are very linked with their childhood environment, and we actually can't provide this happiness to give them this design if we don't delve into their childhood experiences.
What you are saying also means that design work across cultural boundaries should not be permitted.
Yes.
Simply because cultural boundaries are and the differences are so deep. When I lived in Africa for 2.5 years in Ethiopia, yes, I realized how fundamental the cultural differences. And so I'm very critical of architects who design everywhere in the world just for, as a business.
The childhood memories that you have, I know you write a lot about haptic perception, but I'm more into the smell, the olfactory, and the aromas that perhaps within our families in the home, while they were cooking, will link with the design of the home at that moment.
Absolutely. I have actually written several pieces on smoke in architecture.
Yes.
And a 1.5 years ago, I also designed a perfume for an international perfume company in New York, which was based on my childhood memories. A lady, one of the chemists of the company, contacted me and asked whether I would be interested. I said, yes, I'm interested, but don't you know that I will be, at that time I was 82 years old, and the first sense to deteriorate is smell. She said, yes, I do know that, but I also know that the memories of smells are the deepest memories. So we decided that, or agreed, that I will do my work in the project by my childhood memories of smells.
Ah, so you remember the certain aromas of your child?
They are there for forever.
Yes.
For instance, the smell of dry hay, when hay was brought by horse carriage to a barn on a hot day, the smell was really strong. And I, now that I'm talking to you, I have this smell in my nose.
Really?
So there are many smells that are really stronger than any other kinds of memories.
You wrote an essay about the pandemia.
For
Yes, and
Spanish journal.
yes, exactly. And I was very touched by the end because you say we have to relearn the art of dwelling. And
Yes,
how
that's
can we?
actually the theme of Martin Heidegger.
Yes.
Heidegger, his famous lectures on dwelling. I think he gave them in 1954. One of the points was that the modern man has lost his capacity to dwell.
And the empathy.
Yes. Well, increasingly dwelling is becoming a kind of almost a service that you purchase by money, whereas in order to dwell, you have to work yourself. You have to make the place yours. For instance, I have written about the smells of my grandfather's farmhouse, which were very strong in the old days. There were women's smells. They were different from men because women dealt with cows and milk and food, whereas men dealt with horses and tools. The two smells of men and women were very distinct, whereas in today's world, urban world, that separation has vanished almost completely.
Do you think, Professor, that as designers, as architects, especially right now that we are in this situation of, in the light of a pandemic, design should become more, we should be more careful at the time of design so we can provide something to help families to overcome this situation of being locked at home in our rooms? Like, there is any way or any advice that you can give to us as designers or architects to be more empathic? Like, how can we be more empathic? How we can find this coherence in design to stop drawing geometrical figures and not taking the real important part of this?
My professor at the university, he often said in the lectures that for an architect, it is more important to have talent in imagining human situations than imagining forms and spaces. And that was the most important message I received during my studies.
Yes.
It was such an important idea that I have survived very well with that single idea.
It kind of smash everything that we had learned before about design, right?
Yeah.
To add such difficult part, which is imagining. Like I heard when you were explaining, you have to act as the other person.
Yes.
And then give the design as a gift, as a surprise.
Yes. And I just had a little interview today with a former assistant of mine who's now a theater designer, stage designer, and we were speaking about this thing, and I said to him that an architect also needs to be an actor, to have the gift of imagining another person's world and then enacting that life. It should not be taken naively, but there is, in empathy, there is this moment or element of acting.
Yes.
I don't know, by the way, of any school of architecture which would teach empathy as a course. I have several times thought of that idea.
One architect handed me your book. This book is for you. Read it. You will understand, because I was always complaining. And then he gave me the eyes of the skin. And after this book, I went to study psychology, the full career. I am in the middle of the way, just because it is very important to understand the other mind, the other person is behaving in certain ways. How can we do to help this person thrive in difficult times? What is the person lacking in their current home, and how can we make it better? So all these things are basically the reason I admire you, and I didn't find many architects that are interested in these topics, because I don't know what's happening. But nowadays, with the pandemic, I think most of the people found themselves hating, not liking very much their homes, and we are confined. So everybody's trying to buy some plants, to put some different cushions, but it's not about this. It's about the whole design, the synergy of the design that will help you thrive.
Yes, yes. For I closed my office 10 years ago. Nowadays, I only write here. And my last project was a concert hall. And my main focus in the concert hall was to design a space which activates the visitors, the public's sensual relationship with the space. I spoke with the conductor and the musicians about acoustic, about visual acoustics, which architects do not usually think of, that all the senses interact. And we touch by vision, for instance. We hear by our eyes. And in the design of the concert hall, it was very important to give an atmosphere which feels like you would be in a musical instrument that prepares your senses to the concert. So I have become, or I have been, equally interested in this empathic task, both in public buildings and house design. Also, an art museum needs a lot of empathy. Most of the art museums of today are so harsh and distant in the all whiteness and hard white light that they don't really advance enjoyment of light, of art.
And arrogance.
Yes, also artworks need a soft, kind light and setting, then they have their full power.
It's so right. I find a lot of arrogance in the field, and it's not possible to be empathic if you are arrogant. And how to yes
a good architect needs to be receptive and humble.
Humble.
Yes,
Correct.
absolutely.
Yeah, we don't find this very often, but yes, it is important. And how, for example, in the eyes of Juhani Palasma, how can you explain the phenomenology of home?
I have written about.
I know, no, I know. Just for example, for an audience that have never heard nothing related to it, what is the difference maybe about phenomenology and neuroscience applied in architecture?
Well, the phenomenology of home, for me, is a study or attitude how the dialogue between the dweller and the home works. What are its ingredients? Because the home speaks to us, and we speak to or reflect meanings to the home. But it's always a dialogue. I often say that when we enter a space, the space enters us. It's a perpetual dialogue. One of my good friends, who's an American philosopher, architect, Sarah Robinson, she's just publishing a book which has a title, Architecture is a Verb. And she has taken that title from one of my writings where I use this expression, architecture is a verb, it's not a noun. It organizes and points out, relates things. So it is an active verb. And when we realize this verb essence of architecture, and especially home, then we begin to understand what this phenomenology of home or phenomenology of dwelling could be.
It's not about doing the same over and over, it's about relearning this art.
Yes, and it's architecture is fundamentally about relationships. Architecture structures our experience of the world. It points out and hides and organizes and gives hierarchies and so forth. And it is this active changing of conditions which is essential in architecture. Maurice Merleau-Ponty, who's my favorite philosopher, he has a beautiful line where he says, we do not come to see a work of art, we come to see the world according to the work. And this is exactly the definition of architecture. We don't come to see architecture, but the world according to that architecture.
And in that aspect, do you believe architects and designers could merge career like architecture with psychology? Like we should look for more human-centered careers to merge it with architecture and design in order to achieve this empathy that we are looking for.
Well, I don't think one can speculate or rationalize empathy. You simply have to soften yourself.
Feel it.
You feel it.
Yes, you always talk, you as a constructionist, you always talk about you have constructed yourself. You have to construct yourself by reading about all the books that you can, that you used to tell your students, don't read about architecture books, read about other books,
Yes,
because this is how you construct yourself. What
yes.
what did you mean with that? That
I think uh, reading novels, reading poetry, watching good films, looking at good art, they all soften yourself and prepare you for good design work.
for the ones that are still not that soft. Yes, I
I just said the other, well, today actually in the conversation earlier, that I have practically never in my work looked at work by other architects in similar tasks. If I'm designing say a concert hall, I never look at the concert halls by other architects.
is that
I
good
look
or bad?
I look at early Renaissance painting.
Correct, correct. I am so grateful that you had shared with me your childhood, what you think about empathy, and I believe the all what you have teached us is very important for our future right now. These times that we are living in this pandemic and these situations are forcing us as students, as designers, as architects, even psychologists, to look for deeper solutions so we can make better homes, we can construct better offices, we can make better designs for more difficult times, because we don't see any end of this. This pandemic has been a catastrophe, like you wrote down in the essay, it's a catastrophe, and we don't know when this is going to end. And the only thing that we can do,
Please go ahead.
the only thing that we can do is to learn from you and to learn how to design and how to construct ourselves so we can design better.
Yes, this, as you probably know from my writings, for me the idea of working on oneself is very central. Martin, sorry, uh, Wittgenstein, who's a rather strict philosopher in his philosophy, he has a beautiful line where he says, philosophy and architecture are similar. They are both ways of working on yourself. I think it's a very nice idea, and I try to guide my students to involve themselves in the processes, because only in education it's only through the sense of self that anyone can learn anything meaningful.
And I've been constructing myself through you and through your books and many other. I've been studying a bit about neuroscience applied in architecture and design.
Yeah.
And it's very good to have many issues proved by science, but still it's not giving us the tools. So how can we really put it on practice?
Yes, it's exactly what you say. I have collaborated with neuroscientists quite a lot in California at the Jonas Salk Institute, and they are always a bit how would I say, disappointed with me because they would wish me to be enthusiastic about neuroscience. But so much of neuroscience still today is technocratic. It takes us away from the mental phenomena rather than towards this understanding. I'm now being a bit harsh on the neuroscientists, but because I think it's very important, but it is much more important to understand the meaning of art than and how it works on us, through one's personal experience, than being able to explain certain neural mechanics in the brain and neural system.
And the mirror neurons and all this that is being new, and everybody's trying to explain it and to understand it, but at the end of the day is the same. We have to loosen ourselves in order to even understand this, because if you are not empathic, if you are not soft, if you are not humble as a designer, how can you go and read or study about mirror neurons? And already you're not being, this is what I believe, you're not being true to yourself and to what you are studying. Maybe I'm being harsh too with this, but is what I believe.
One of my good friends among the neuroscientists is Vittorio Gallese.
Who discovered this?
Exactly. He writes very beautifully. He writes like a humanist poet, and this is exactly the kind of neuroscience that I support, which does not, how would I say, try to operate with rational kind of mechanical things, but understands the human cultural archaic dimension in the arts. Have you ever read any writings by Vittorio Gallese?
Yes, I did, and I even saw a video where he was a bit upset, as Italian that he is, so he was a bit upset that why is everybody prostituting the mirror neurons?
Yeah.
The prostitution of the mirror neurons, I think it was an architect, a Mexican architect, Juan Carlos Baumgartner, who posted this video, and I was laughing because it's true. Like myself, I don't understand very well the mechanism, and what you say makes sense for me, that he is humanistic, and that probably helped him to get there, to discover this.
Yes. There is, by the way, there are now studies also on empathy among animals. We usually do not think that animals have empathy, with the exception of dogs, perhaps. But empathy is a very important skill among animals, all kinds of animals. Even plants have empathy. They help each other. They communicate. There is a almost shocking piece of news half a year ago in a Finnish newspaper about the language of trees, certain species of trees. The researchers found out that the trees had a vocabulary of 800 words, of course, in parentheses, but they communicated with 800, how would I say, ingredients. And then they also found out that the trees had local dialects. just like human languages.
To dig deep into that, about the plants and about the animals having empathy, and it tells us a lot about the synergy that we can get by using probably biomimicry in design. And you said about your childhood environment, growing up in a farm, not growing up, like the first years of life, you were in a farm and you were spending most of the time, I believe, outside. You understood how nature works.
Yes, yes, I watched animals very, very closely because in a remote farm there were plenty of occasions to study animal life. And I don't know whether you have seen my book on animal architecture, but that was something I worked on during the 70s and 80s quite a lot.
I think I'm missing that one. That's not good for me. That's not good that you ask me that, because I have to be honest. No, I haven't.
Yeah. Well, I tell you what happened. I was so close to animals in my childhood that there was a narrow 2 meters or 3 meters wide river running across the farms of my grandfather. I knew all the fishes in the river. I had names for them.
No way.
So when my grandmother would tell me to go and catch a fish for dinner, I would ask which one of them.
You knew you were.
Yes.
And did you fish them?
Yes, yes. Because in the farm life, animals, it was understood even by children that they are for human survival. I was only 4 years old when I had to whip the blood of a pig that my grandfather slaughtered. Yes.
Happened. It happened to
That's really important life.
and the relation that you had with nature had any impact in your life, in the things that you like right now? For example, you live in a villa or in an apartment.
Apartment.
Okay.
But we have a summer place by a lake.
I saw it. I saw you sitting outside and they took a picture of you.
Where did you see it?
They posted somewhere in an architectural page. I believe is that one is it's a holiday home.
Yes.
And you are sitting outside, but you are not looking at the camera. And I took that picture for me because I wanted to look at the house to see how it looks. But I saw you enjoying nature. That's the point. I saw you enjoying nature, and I was thinking, does he live in a house? He lives in an apartment. Perhaps because I know the story about the farm. I knew it. And I was thinking, probably you missed this contact, this constant contact with nature. Do you crave to sit outside in the balcony, perhaps?
Well, for me, as for most Finnish people, I would say forests are very important. They are part of our mentality. Whenever I'm tired or depressed or angry for something, I go to the forest. 15 minutes walk in a forest will cure any problem. The forest is such a fantastic environment. Yes, I agree with you. I have myself used the word biomimicry, but I have become a bit critical about it nowadays because it's not really mimicry. It is
Mimicking something.
yes, it is understanding processes, not mimicking mimicking any products, but understanding processes.
The mechanism of the nature.
Please send me your postal address, and
Yes.
I will send you my animal book.
I'm so happy to hear that. I'm so happy because
You speak Spanish.
I speak Spanish, a bit Arabic, and my English is not amazing. So
I was just going to ask where did you learn your English, because it's perfect.
I had born in Lebanon. My dad, I come from a family, mixed family, a Muslim dad, a Catholic mother from Colombia. So in home a lot, the nostalgia of home. And every time I found terracotta floors, maybe in the exit of a mall, the ugliest part, they use the terracotta for the most ugliest things in design in Dubai. Like they don't consider terracotta as beautiful as I do, because I grew up running in terracotta floors. I study having terracotta and brick walls is normal in Colombia. So for me, terracotta direct me to you, the terracotta floor. So I was writing about identity and place attachment and how do I feel with the terracotta floors. And even though it's not the most beautiful material, when I only to look at the terracotta floor and see it, in a subconscious way, I'm thinking about my grandmother, the rice with milk, the aroma, her house, her plants. So it's like a bomb.
Now we are coming back to where we began, and this is exactly how architecture works on us.
So much, Professor. Thank you so much. I could stay with you. I could take all your time, all your days, all your hours just to talk, but I know I cannot do that. So a bit selfish from me. So I will let you go. I will let you relax. Thank you so much for this
Send me your postal address by email.
Believe me, I did not forget that part. You will get it as soon as I close this. You will get it, and I wish one day I will meet you. Have a great day. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you. See you.
Bye-bye.